So, David, are you ready here to show us some of the samples and examples that you have?
I have to give kind of a quick shout out to Todd Steve. Used to be a colleague of mine, and he still teaches science where I used to teach. And he gave me some documents to kind of help with this rubric thing that we're doing. Um, so going back to what you said, one of the things that you had mentioned when you were talking about the various types of feedback is you had mentioned that not only can we use our rubrics that we've got to create the feedback for students, but you can also create a rubric off of directions that you've already got. One of the coolest things about Brisk, and really as we've been moving forward and looking at these AI tools, one of the coolest things to me is just the ability to start with an initial construction of something and then build off of that, which is basically what you were doing with the syllabus, because you start with nothing, and then all of a sudden you've got a syllabus, and then from there you start picking and choosing pieces from your syllabus to then create lesson plans, and then you just keep going and going and going, and so you're starting from scratch and then building all of your content, and all of the pieces that would go along with your content assessments and student work and all of that
It
in
just
one.
starts to branch out, right? You pick one spot and you can just add this, add this, add this, and really use
Yeah.
it to create a big web of
Yep.
everything that you eventually would need.
Yeah, yep, and it really you can do it pretty quick. It's that's one of the things that's kind of blown my mind is we've been playing around with these different tools, and Brisk in particular is just the ability or the efficiency at which it produces these things. Granted, we always throw the caveat in there that you should still check and make sure that it's what you want and that the information is accurate. But in a general sense, it pushes out some things for you immediately. So I do want to look. So this is for an honors chemistry class, Mr. Steve there, and this is the directions that the students have for creating their lab reports. And so I do have two student examples here that we're going to look at. But what I wanted to do first is, if we let's say that going back to, if we don't have anything but this lab and we don't have a rubric set up yet, we could do that. So we would just go to our create button and click rubric, and then we can select that here. Um, Now you could pull in a standard if you want, or you can write in that you need a rubric for this assignment. And so I'm just going to be real generic. Okay. And I just, 10th grade, 4-point scale. One of the things that we've looked at before too, is the prompt booster, which is kind of a nice little feature, to be able to make, Brisk will take and make your very generic entry, your prompt, much more complex or full. Now this is not something that you would have to do. I think it's a good exercise just to see how Brisk will read the document and then produce something for you based on the contents of the document. Um, so for this, I'm going to be really generic in terms of what we do for this assignment. So I'm just going to say, I need a rubric for this lab report assignment. Okay, and again, you can pull in your standards if you want to, and we'll click brisket, and it's going to it does it in plain text first each time you do this. So you'll see these dotted lines. So if you're like, that doesn't look right, it'll do it in plain text, and then it'll transition it into an actual table in the document. So there you go. So you'll have your traditional looking rubric that you could print off or whatever you want to do there. It just doesn't do it right away. It has to formulate it first, and then it'll push it out. So there we go. So we have, in this case, we have our lab report assignment, and then we have our lab report rubric. And then what's great too is, like anything that we've done with these AI systems, you're never stuck with what you have. You can always go in and you can make changes if you need to. Mr. Steve had his own rubric here. And so one of the things that's interesting is if, they do standards-based grading at that school. And so they have these scales already set. One thing that is interesting is maybe making a rubric for an assignment and then comparing it to an already created rubric. In most cases, you're probably doing it because you don't have a rubric yet. But at the same time, it's kind of interesting for those that already have a created rubric to make one and then make some comparisons to see if there's anything that you could alter with your own that you've already created. But that would be how you create the rubric. Okay.